Wonderful. Hello, everyone. It's noon, I think over a minute actually. So want to get started. Want to welcome you today to NATCO's Leadership Webinar. I'm Michelle Reef, the Leadership Development Facilitator for NATCO, and we're very excited today to kind of kick off, I think maybe our first leadership webinar that we've done. And so we just want to welcome you. Today's format really is more kind of discussion based. It's panelists. We've got blessed to have two amazing panelists with us today. And first, we really just kind of want to walk through some exciting news that we have kicked off a new kind of leadership development refresh, if you will. And if you know me, I'm a big quote person, and I like to kind of reflect on a lot of the great quotes that are out there. And so this one today, I think, is a great snapshot of really what we're trying to capture at NATCO and leadership. And in leadership, I think, as many of us know, it really starts with ourselves, self-awareness. We have to really grow ourselves before we can grow others. And that really is the precipice of us, kind of Donna, Karen, and I talking about what can NATCO do for our community? How can we help grow not only ourselves as individuals, but also others? And so if you've been wondering what we've been up to, or if you've seen a little bit about our new program, we wanted to take this opportunity to share with you what that looks like. And then what better to hear from those that have gone through some of NATCO's programs to kind of share with you their perspective, and then you can ask them questions, and I'm sure they'd be happy to share some of their experiences. So we have launched our leadership development pathway, if you will, in three different, or a series in three different pathways. And so we really just want to talk to you briefly about what that is. The three pathway is starts with Ignite. And so when you think about those leaders out there and you have people on your team and you think, wow, there's something special about them, I'm going to hand the baton off to them one day. I'm going to help nurture them and grow so they can take over our roles as leaders and be better than we ever were. And when you find those people on your team that have ignited their own passion about leadership and want to grow themselves, it's great to be able to invest in them. And so that's what our Ignite program is being able to invest in those leaders or potential leaders that really want to start growing their influence, that maybe you've seen them connect with people on the team. Our second pathway is Accelerate. And so Accelerate is those maybe your newer leaders, and I would say kind of that middle management group, which probably a lot of us would say is a hard spot to be in. You're managing really from the top and from the team perspective. And so your lens is a little bit different. A lot of times there's individual contributors who might have got thrusted in these leadership roles, and they just need some skills. They need to look at things not only from an individual performer lens, but from a department lens. And a lot of people in this group I would say, are going from peers to now leading what used to be their peers. Very challenging place to be. And so that takes some skills, that takes some coaching, that takes a lot of trust building. We use Franklin Covey as the foundation of our programs. We talk a lot about trust because I think if you're any of your Patrick Lencioni fans out there too, he talks about that being the foundation of a lot of things. And in our industry, as we all know, it is a huge trust-based industry in our community. And so that's important for people and leadership as well. And so that's the Accelerate. Our third pathway is Thrive. And so as you think about growing your leadership and your executive presence, you're now moving from a lens of looking from departmental, but also organizationally. And so when you move the different levers, if you will, in the different maybe projects or processes you're working on, how does that impact the overall organization? How do you get the most out of people? How do you help inspire them? How do you have some cross collaboration? And so really thinking about your leadership kind of blueprint, how you grow your circle of influence and how you leave your leadership legacy, that's really what Thrive is about. And so those are our three pathways. A little bit about the value of this, and I don't want to steal too much of Siobhan and Robert's thunder because they're going to talk a little bit about what they got out of their experience. But in our program, there are 2 in-person meetings, and that's the cohort style. They're going to talk a little bit about the impact the cohort had on them. We go through, as I mentioned, the Franklin Covey content. And what I think is really special about that is that we not only review some of the in-person courses, about 7 to 10, depending on which pathway you're in, but that Franklin Covey All Access is provided to you for 2 years. And so you get the full library beyond what we walk through. There's also some virtual and on-demand content. So those of you that need some self-paced learning and kind of get some little tidbits here and there, maybe some micro courses, those are part of the program. We've incorporated new this year, or for next year, leadership exchanges. I think many of you in the community might be familiar with the exchange concept. It's all teach, all learn. And I know for me personally, I learn from all of you in the community. And so that gives us an opportunity to vet back and forth some ideas and really grow our influence. And then something that I think is pretty special that we get a lot of positive comments about is the coaching piece of it. And so that's one-on-one coaching. And what I think is really impactful about that is it brings some psychological safety. You get to have kind of your personal coach that knows enough about the industry to be dangerous, but is not right there rooted in your organization. And so it gives some unbiased, objective opportunities to vet through process, projects, ideas, challenges, and it really is a nice opportunity to just have some reflection and engagement. And so that's a little bit about the new pathway, and we're excited to share it with you in the community. I am going to now really turn it over. We'll leave for questions at the end, but I really want to give the bulk of the time to Robert and Siobhan, who so graciously gave their time for us today to talk through about their experiences. And that's the real return on the investment in themselves and their organization. And so I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to have Siobhan and Robert introduce themselves, tell a little bit about yourself, and then maybe what year you attended NATCO's Emerging Leaders Program. And then we're going to go with some questions and have some really good dialogue, and then have some questions at the end. So Siobhan, how about we start with you?
All right. So my name is Siobhan Newman. I work at WVU Medicine Hospitals in the Department of Transplant Alliance. I I'm the manager of Transplant Services. Oh my gosh, I did the series because the years always seem to go past, but it was in 2024, 2023 to 2024. Got it. So I'm just coming off of that course.
Great. Thank you, Siobhan. And Robert?
Yes, I'm Robert Myers. I'm now the Assistant Manager of Hospital Development for LifeLink of Florida. So since my time starting the NATCO program, I've seen some progression in my career, which has been very exciting, and we can talk about that in a bit. But I was in the 2023 class, and again, totally, Siobhan, I totally get you. It feels like long ago, but not that long ago at the same time. But I'm really excited to be here today to talk a bit about the program.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations on the promotion. That's super exciting. And really, I think that is a great way to kind of maybe share that return on investment that you made in yourself and the organization made on you. So kudos to you for your promotion. I'm sure you worked very hard for it. So we talked a little bit, I just briefly mentioned the cohort style. There's in-person meetings with the Emerging Leaders Program and now the Leadership Development Series. Robert, tell us a little bit about kind of how you found that, or what maybe value you got out of that cohort style connecting with peers in the industry.
Yeah, I think, those of us in the industry anyway, we're always really aware of, certainly from my point of view, coming from an OPO, we're aware of our donor hospitals, our transplant centers, but really getting to engage with, people who provide those ancillary services to us. There were folks that are involved in the transport of organs, So it was just really interesting to connect with other people that really, I think, understand what we do. I've done leadership courses in the past that maybe were less focused on our industry. And I think that really, for everyone, just having that knowledge coming into the room, I think kind of gives you that leg up and that confidence when getting started. I was fortunate that we had staff not only from LifeLink of Florida attending two others, and also two from LifeLink of Georgia, and just to hear the different experiences that we have, even though we're part of the same organization, and also just having that commonality there was really good too. So I know in our organization we've talked about how many people should go. Should we send people from different departments in the organization? And I think as long as you go in with an open mindset of being very honest and sometimes vulnerable with the feedback of the challenges and things that you encounter, then that's great. But I loved being part of our class. We held each other accountable. For me as well, having folks in our organization there also helped keep me on track with things. But it was nice as well to get to meet everyone at the beginning and then meet people, towards the end of the year again, and kind of reunite and reconnect for sure as well.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great to be able to connect with multiple people in the industry and get different perspectives. Siobhan, how about for you? On the transplant side, it's kind of a blessing to have the audiences together on all sides of the kind of the ecosystem, if you will. What was your experience like for the cohort?
As Robert is talking, I'm shaking my head because it was the same thing. So when I attended the course, it was myself and one other coordinator that was from a transplant hospital. So it was other OPOs and those within the transplant industry. So it was an eye-opener to see that, granted, we all have these challenges, but I see the challenges here, but not realizing that it's on the other side as well. So, coming together, being able to, share experiences, but also learn from everybody else's experience. I mean, that was very, very beneficial to me. I mean, I know we utilize an on-call service, and I just happened to meet the manager of the program that we work with at that same, like he was in the same class. I heard his name and was like, hey, I know you. And we were able to develop, some process improvements based off of some barriers we were having. So, I mean, it was a great experience.
Yeah, that's a great illustration of really making those connections and really helping develop something special to bring back to your organization. So it's a great example. Siobhan, I'll stay with you on this question and we'll go to Robert. Obviously there's a lot of different leadership offerings. You can, have some different courses and kind of one and done. How would you describe this program compared to some others that you have participated in?
So you mentioned earlier about being that peer that is now a leader. So that was me in this position that I currently have. I was a peer. Now they're like, hey, you're taking on this. So when I dove into the world of leadership, I went in without a life jacket. I just jumped in, didn't know anything. They were told to read a couple books. So I picked up a new leader, or I'm in management, what now? All these little self-help books. The institution did offer a 2 to 3 hour course, but it was just the basics, nothing really. But when I found out about this NATCO Emerging Leaders, like total game changer. Like it's not just read a book and you're done, or watch a video and you're done. It was putting things that you learn into practice, and it's changing your behavior. You have to identify that you need some help, and it's definitely utilizing that and totally changing your behavior, which will change the culture of your environment.
Wonderful. I think that's a great testament to what you've been able to take back from it. And Robert, how about you?
I think, for me, different from Siobhan, I was someone that, had expressed that I wanted to be in leadership, and I was kind of at that beginning point there. But I think what was really valuable about this, and I know we've touched on it, but I think you can't, kind of over talk about it, is just, that you guys have the knowledge of the industry that we're in. So having done other leadership courses that are very much talking about the skills you need to be a leader, but you guys understand how to apply it, and you guys understand some of the challenges that we encounter in what we're doing. So I remember, particularly in the in-person classes, Karen and Donna would talk about the challenges that we're experiencing as OPOs, or the challenges that transplant centers are experiencing, and talking about how we can apply these skills and the importance of these skills. And I think just talking about it in that setting, sometimes you'll learn something in a different course and you think, well, how do I apply that to what I do? It sounds great, but how do I apply that? So a lot of, the importance of trust to relationships and things like that, in hospital development, that's kind of everything we do, but it completely changed my perspective of, the importance of being, just really transparent with things and not trying to spin things. I think sometimes when we try to be good partners, we try and do that. So I think that made me kind of look at what I was already doing that I thought I was doing really well, and really kind of reevaluating it. And then after that, having those coaching calls really just allowed me to keep on top of it. I think we've probably all been guilty in the past of learning something and thinking, wow, that's great. And then the next week we get to work and there's 100 emails, and all of a sudden there's a crisis and we don't get that opportunity to take time and think. So a lot of the tools that we were given really helped with that, along with the coaching, for sure.
Wonderful. And really, and you mentioned coaching too. And you also mentioned Donna and Karen, and they facilitating those coaching calls. How can you share with us a little bit about maybe some aha moments, or a little bit more expand on the impact those coaching calls had for you?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I was kind of new coming into things. So there were some things that we were talking about, like one-on-ones, that maybe I didn't at the time have direct reports. So it was kind of, I understood the concept, but because, I think when it's particularly in hospital development, we're seen as leaders of a donation program to a hospital. So I was able to kind of turn the skills and use them in what I was doing every day. So, the importance of one-on-ones, the importance of committing to meetings, and not, saying last minute, I'm sorry, something came up, and hoping someone understands, how detrimental that can be to a relationship. So I think, that was really great as well. But certainly during the coaching calls, Karen truly has a wealth of knowledge, as is Donna. So there were lots of times that, and like you said before, Karen and Donna, Switzerland, right? They're not, they're not in our organization. They're not, you can be very candid with them about people's character if you're struggling with something, or it gives you a safe space to kind of talk about an approach. Maybe, if you're planning to talk to someone about maybe performance where they're struggling, that gave me a space to kind of talk about that. And for me, talk about it in a way that came across kind of more as a peer, that's a senior peer, than someone who's a direct leader at that point in time.
Yeah, great. And I think just having that opportunity to connect with them, like you said, the Switzerland piece, the impartiality, really listening to be there for you and being present in the challenges that you might be having. So I'm glad to hear that that was a positive experience for you. How about you, Siobhan, in your coaching calls? What kind of impact did you see from that?
Well, my impact was Karen was always on me. She was, you have the tools. What are you doing to use it? So, I mean, yes, they give you all this information and you have to be ready to use it. So, I mean, I remember my calls where I would always have, like, it just so happened there would be some issue that I'm like, she's just calling me, and I'm like, ugh, and I'm blurring it all at her. And she's like, so tell me what you're going to do. Out of the tools that you've learned, what are you going to do? So it's not giving you the answers or them giving you the answers. It's them guiding you as to use what the tools that you have to, consider to foster that change, because you have to change your behavior. You have to change you. So, you know, it was a safe space because I had some challenges, and we talked a lot about, how do you navigate this? How do you safely have that conversation? How do you, you know, say things without hurting somebody's feelings? Um, so she did, those calls helped a lot. And trust, that's a big thing. Robert, when you talked about those one-on-ones and building trust, don't skip out on those meetings. That's your designated time, and your team looks at that. So you don't think that it's oh, okay, something else came up, I can just push that aside. You're not really realizing that you're affecting that other person. And effective one-on-ones, not just you blurting out everything. It's you sitting back and listening and letting your team tell you what they need. So I learned a lot. That was the key, some of the key things that I learned through my coaching calls.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that, sometimes when we think of coaching or mentorship, we might think of like that rah-rah and that cheerleader. And there's some of that.
Yeah.
There's also that being comfortable enough to push back, or, hey, let's challenge some of those thoughts. And as a coach, being able to, like, I'm gonna lean into this and push back on you, and being that devil's advocate, if you will, to really kind of expand all of our minds and have really good dialogue. So I love that you guys had that experience with Karen and Donna. You mentioned career growth. Really, I think both of you have had growth in your career. Can you share with us a little bit about how this has really expanded your network and your growth? I know, Siobhan, you mentioned that the on-call connection you had made. What are some other examples of some of the connections that you've been able to build in the community as a result of this program?
So this, I mean, there's so many others, but that one was very monumental, like to have that connection, but also, still being able to connect with those that attended the class, as well as with this, you're able to get into the network of others that have participated in this course. So, it's not just whom you met with then, but you can actually use others as a resource to, as far as staffing at, this transplant hospital, what did you do to improve your staffing? What did you do to improve your satisfaction with staff? I mean, just having those basic, what we feel are simple conversations, but it's not just me, it's being able to talk to somebody else. So, I still reach out to people and say, hey, what are you doing here? How, I'm having this issue. Can you help me with it?
Yeah, that camaraderie is like invaluable. Those connections you build. Sometimes it takes a lot of time. And when you're spending time with these people, especially in person, you're able to do that quickly.
Oh yeah, it's very intimidating at first because, I'm flying into Oklahoma and I don't know anybody. So, it was a bit intimidating, but as soon as you got there, it was different because we're all here for the same reason. We are all here to be better leaders and to learn from each other. So, by the time it was over, we were like, oh man, what are we gonna do? So yeah.
Great. Robert, how about you? I mean, obviously, coming from a hospital development background, relationship building is really, your big key and focus a lot of times. How did you kind of expand your network, professional network?
There are other folks from OPOs there, which is always great. I think OPOs traditionally have always kind of collaborated very well together and kind of shared and things like that. But also outside of that, getting to meet people that worked for preservation companies, transport companies. So we, like I said, we sent a group to my session. So that was kind of nice too, that I had someone that was a clinical team member with me that could be like, oh, hey, this is so and so, and they handle this for us. And so it definitely gave me a much wider view of kind of what, our place in the whole overall system, definitely. And I think, like Siobhan was saying, in the beginning, there are all these people, but you're all coming into the room. I don't know who has 10 years experience as a leader, who has, and we don't know what backgrounds we all have either. I think so. It's kind of a nice level playing field. We're all learning this new stuff at the same rate. I think so that really brings people closer together. And then even just simple things like, eating together and getting the opportunity to take breaks together, I think is just another way that kind of, you know, encourages that camaraderie for sure.
Yeah, we have a class going on this year, and there's a group of them that have really connected. They book all their travel arrangements together. They are on a text chain together. They're throwing out, hey, I'm having challenges with this, kind of like what you mentioned, Siobhan. And so it is so nice to be able to see it in action. Like, you get to see everyone connecting, and from that first in person to that second in person, because we just had it, and just how comfortable people are, and just in the short amount of time, building those relationships and connections. So it's special to see, and I can only imagine, you know, the impact you guys have had. You know, thinking about buy-in, because it takes buy-in to be able to go to some of these kinds of trainings. And we talked, you know, I shared a little bit earlier on about the value in the program. We talked about the cohort. We talked a little bit about the Franklin Covey. Share with us a little bit. We'll start with you, Siobhan. How did you get buy-in from your organization to support your participation, and kind of what tips would you give people today?
Well, I will say I had a little bit of a one-up. So the year before, my quality manager had attended the session. And when she came back, she had a whole new, different attitude. You know, her interactions with her teammates was different. I was looking at this like, okay, I was a little jealous. Like, what did you learn? You know, and my director at that point knew about the program. So, you know, she was like, oh, you're going. Now that Kim went, you're going. So I really didn't have to pull for it because it was already there. My director saw the difference that, you know, how things changed with, you know, my quality manager, and was like, this needs to continue to move so that we can continue to grow our program. So yeah, I witnessed that. So I really didn't have to really say I want to do this. But I can say by my experience, if there's somebody at another institution where they need that buy-in, I can definitely talk to them and say, hey, it works. It helps. I can even talk about my staffing and retention. It's just from attending, you know, this program. I have fewer people that have left since I've came back.
Well, I mean, that demonstrates a lot, I think, and not
Mm-hmm.
only the example of being able to go for yourself because of the demonstrated return that somebody else, you know, you'd seen in that change in their maybe attitude and their culture and their building of their
Mm-hmm.
team. And it sounds like you've been able to demonstrate your own personal return with the staffing retention.
Yes.
So what a great, I mean, great way to say, hey, this really is
It works.
protective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Robert, how about you? What about your kind of the buy-in and going to leaders and be like, I really think I need to attend this?
Yeah. So I went to a leadership development summit for AOPO, if I'm allowed to say that here.
Yeah.
It was a very different experience. It was kind of like a mini NATCO conference. It was big. There were multiple speakers. But really all the discussion was had between me and other people from our organization. So it looking back now, it was a great experience, but it was passive. So after that, I wanted, I knew I wanted to move into leadership. I've been very clear with that with LifeLink. So when I saw this opportunity, I wrote an email to our executive director and assistant executive director and said that, I recognize this is an opportunity to develop myself. And I kind of gave all my reasons why. I thought this was going to be a great opportunity for me. Um, and my director was very clear. She's like, it's going to be additional work. It's, you have to fulfill all your normal duties as well. But this was something I was passionate about, and that's what I said to her, that this was something that I wanted to do. For me to feel that development, I think we can have great leaders in organizations, but just because someone's a great leader doesn't necessarily mean they know how to directly develop the next generation of leadership. And I think that was another thing that we talked about as well, was that, we're busy, our OPO is busy, our leadership are busy, so sometimes that quality time isn't there. So that in hand with the fact that, you guys are so ingrained in our, our community, means not only are we getting super relevant training, but we're able to, apply it too.
Mhm.
I think, making that request to my leadership and saying that I would share the things that I was learning as well, I think meant a lot to them. So after both in-person sessions, we did a meeting where we presented what we'd learned and how we thought we were going to apply it with the teams. In addition to in-servicing with our teams that were maybe more bite-sized bits that we kind of
Mhm.
cherry picked that were great for everyone. So I think that, not only did I say that that was what we were going to do, we kind of walked the talk as well. So I think, that also then set the stage for us to send people in the future too, like Siobhan was saying.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about, well, one, your initiative for doing that and wanting to invest in yourself. And two, I think just kind of declaring your own personal path. Like you have a vision and of continuing to grow your career, and you know that it's going to take some things to help you develop. And so I think those two things were, I applaud you for that, to have that kind of plan and initiative. And I think you've also demonstrated the ROI. It sounds like you're taking things back that you've learned and sharing that. It's just kind of that multiplying effect of taking the content and being able to share it with the organization, which I think is a wonderful way to do it. And again, the multiplying of leaders is something that I'm passionate about, and I think that's a special way to be able to demonstrate that return on the investment that the organization's making. We talked about the relationships, and Robert, I know we talked briefly about how you maybe use some of these skills that you learned externally facing. And I'll open it to both of you, really, whether it's your hospital partners or other partners that you work with. Like, how did this help you from an external standpoint of really kind of developing some deeper connections in what you do?
You want to go, Robert?
Siobhan, go first.
Oh, okay. No, so how it's helped with my relationships, one is the trust. So, one of the courses that you learn is, the speed of trust and how to build that. So I would just use, being on the transplant side, we of course have to use our organ procurement professionals to go through things. So being able to sit down and meet as a group now that we do, and review, organ offers, review process improvements and things like that. And that came from, my little bit of experience with my OPO people and hearing that they were doing these things. And I'm like, well, why aren't we having these meetings? So it was bringing that back. And, now quarterly we are meeting with, our organ procurement professionals and talking through, how to improve things in the future. So definitely that, the camaraderie that I had with meeting there and being able to interact with those other healthcare professionals guided me to be able to set something up. So I think that it's in the organization, but a little bit outside of the organization.
I think that's a perfect example because, we all mentioned earlier, like everyone's busy. And so some of that time with people is not always there. And so when you have those meetings, you're getting that face to face, or even if it's virtually, but you're having those connections. And I think, like you said, it's really important to build trust. The more touch points you have with people, the easier it is to build that trust. So,
and it's knowing that we have the same goal in mind, it's transplant, and we're trying to get patients, transplanted. So we're trying to utilize these organs. So we have the same goal. Definitely the same goal. So you have to build that trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Robert, how about you? Any deeper, like even personal connections within, whether it's organizational based? I know we were talking about externally, but with your hospital partners or anyone else?
Yeah, definitely. I think, we keep coming back to trust. We all know that trust is so important. I think just for me, trying to add value to my interactions with the hospital, like you said, everyone's, short on time, making sure we're meeting with purpose as much as possible, making the most of our time together. I think a big part of what we do in hospital development, particularly, is introduction of new initiatives and recognizing that as we introduce those, we may see kind of that lull, the importance of kind of really drilling down to figure out the reasons why something may not be taking off the way we expect it to, and then the importance of maintaining momentum and things like that, I think was really, really important. I just came back to my hostels feeling revitalized. I think after that first in-person session, particularly, I think just my presentations with the hospital I felt were more meaningful. I think it just challenged me to to, like I say, really think about that added value to the time that we spend together. I think it's easy to read off a couple of slides, donation metrics, but, really bringing it back to what does it mean for us as a community, especially with donor hospitals that aren't transplant centers, really sharing that story and getting to the heart of it as well.
Yeah. And, thinking about your direct leaders. So you come back from this, you've got some enthusiasm and you're excited. You got a lot of different things you might want to apply. What did, I guess, maybe any of the leaders that you reported to, like, what did they say or notice that might have been different about you after coming back from some of these sessions or having these interactions with the NATCO's program?
I will say that my director noticed that I wasn't coming to her for more of like, what do I do about this? It was more of, oh, I already addressed this. This was, with my staff, I already took care of it. And she's like, okay. So it gave me a sense of confidence and, an assurance of myself to be able to say, okay, I can do this. It's that ugly feeling that you have in your gut, but it's ultimately with those coaching calls, getting that push to say, this, you can do this, you got this. So that she saw a difference in my relationships with my coordinators and how that relationship moved on to how they interacted with their patients and families. So, it was all around a good thing. She was able to notice that. I even suggested that she attend as well, because even though she's a senior leader, it doesn't matter if you're new, you're beginning, or if you are very experienced. There's always room for growth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I love the fact that you grew your confidence, if you will. And I think that's that ownership, right? The ownership of a leader too. And so being able to demonstrate that and that she commented on that,
Yeah.
I think is really special. Robert, how about you? What about your leaders? What did they say or notice?
Yeah, I think so we always had my one-on-ones after my coaching call each month so that we could kind of check in, and I think in some ways maybe, having that safe space with Karen was kind of, prepping me for, how I was going to speak about those things in those meetings, because obviously we want to be at our best for our leadership. But I think just seeing me in my day-to-day work, just, taking I've always been someone that took the initiative, but really trying to do so in a way that kind of maybe gently led people. I think, like I say, I was in a slightly different situation at the beginning as to what I am now with direct reports. So it's how to maybe coach in a way peer to peer that still kind of achieves the goal of things like one-on-ones and things like that. For me, it wasn't a formal one-on-one because I think that would have been taken as I was trying to lead someone that didn't report to me at the time, but really recognizing kind of the key points of the one-on-one. What's the purpose? Keeping things positive, really getting to grips with what the issue is, but also recognizing that maybe going into it as the leader, you don't understand everything of it, having that open questioning and things like that. So certainly kind of in my interactions with my peers and our new hires as well, they got to see that, I think, very early on, which kind of stood me in good stead for this. I think as well, just the fact that, myself and the other two from my organization were given that forum to speak to our, executive leadership in LifeLink. They took pride in knowing that we were going there and wanting to learn a bit more about what we were doing. So even though we just have the sessions typically after the in-person stuff, along the way, they'd be asking how we were doing and things. So I think, again, that was demonstrating that return on investment for sure too.
Sure.
Yeah, I think those are two great examples really of one, just strategizing your one-on-ones with Karen, right before you have your one-on-ones with your leader. I think it is really smart that preparation time and being really thoughtful in how you want to frame some conversations that you're going to have. That's a great example. And then just being able to demonstrate kind of your influence and your leadership capability amongst the organization, and having that space, that forum you said, to be able to do that. So good opportunities there. Siobhan, you mentioned this, and I think this is a great question for you too, just to kind of talk about, you mentioned having your leader take this course or, this training and really invest in them. And we all talked about the busyness of our leaders and the nature of what we do. And I think we all acknowledge the importance of carving that time out.
Yes.
To not lose sight of the continuous learning journey that leadership is and investing in ourselves. So what advice would you have for whether it's, past alumni have taken this or any future ones that want to try to influence their direct leaders and above to invest in themselves in this kind of course, maybe Thrive that we have? What advice would you have for people to try to get the upper leaders above to invest in this for themselves?
To be honest, when you were talking about the new 3 steps, I was already saying I'm going to do Thrive. So I was already thinking about that. So, I mean, what advice I would say is take the course. I mean, not to be so simple, but it is, it's registering, it's being committed and just taking the course. I mean, it's learning about yourself. And as Robert mentioned earlier, you're improving how you are as a person. And if you don't realize that you have some barriers and issues, you can't lead a team effectively. So that I had that down as my first thing, is just take the course. I mean, even if you've already completed the course and you're outside of that 2 years, it doesn't hurt to refresh, do a refresher, because I highly recommend. And I know that Robert and I, we've been through it, and we're here to share our experience, but it's definitely worth looking into it.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert, what would you say? You obviously have the forum, you and your colleagues that have taken it have had the forum to share kind of the impact it's had on all of you. How do you kind of convince or influence your leaders that, like, hey, it's important to carve out this time and maybe look at, Accelerate or Thrive?
Yeah, I think coming back, I'd obviously learned a lot. So, having that opportunity to speak about it, I think was really effective.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're fortunate in my organization that we have leadership that do understand it. So really just reiterating the things that I've learned. I think, like you keep saying, that return on investment, I think is so important. Not only are we strained in terms of time, but also resources as well. So, I think for anyone that's on the fence that has the opportunity to do so, I absolutely say, go ahead and sign up. For anyone that isn't the one that makes that decision, but I'm an example of, you can justify, hopefully, to your leadership what a great opportunity this is going to be for you. And we all just want to get better at everything that we do every day. And like Siobhan said, I think even as an established leader, there's room to grow, there's room to develop. And not only that, it's like we've said, the opportunities to connect with other folks. And we haven't even talked about, I wrote it down, but the all access pass for Franklin Covey. I mean, just being able to dip in there and put in a search engine, I'm having trouble, with performance with an employee, and it, just throws something out of you that might take you 5-10 minutes to read. And that's an opportunity for you to just refresh yourself and before going into those meetings or those interactions and things like that. And I think, not only for within my organization, for me with outside the organization, I remember there was one that was something about working with people, that you find difficult to work with. You have to work with them. How are we going to find a way forward and find that common ground? And I know that was really helpful to me outside my organization, obviously.
Yeah, that it's and thank you for sharing that, because it's a great point to have that resource to go into that NAC or that all access with Franklin Covey to do those searches. And I think now there's the AI feature where it might suggest some things when you log in. And so and Sean, you even talked about kind of the refresh, how it's important to kind of just refresh our mind about some of the key concepts. And there are some just good nuggets when you are trying to struggle through something and a resource to turn to be able to quickly say, okay, I thought I had a really good strategy to have a conversation with this person, and I'm not so sure now. Like, give me a few tidbits. Or, the effective one-on-ones I think we've talked about. You got a new process thrown at you because our industry moves really fast. And so, like, what's that change management we talked about? How do I prepare myself first? How do I prepare my team for it? And so those refreshers that the All Access has, I think is a great feature. So I appreciate you bringing that up. We've talked a lot about kind of the leadership piece, and I had mentioned, I think early on, Ignite really identifying talent in our frontline teams. So let's talk a little bit about that. Kind of your advice on, and let me just say, it's not lost on me. We're all budget conscious. We all, want to hopefully grow everyone in our organization. What advice or what thoughts do you have about strategies you would say to leadership about wanting to invest in some of the frontline teams, the frontline staff who you maybe see for some succession planning? How do you get leaders to really commit to investing in frontline?
Well, one is by example, because we've those that have already attended. But it's also the field is growing, and we're not always going to be here. So we want to make sure that, as you said earlier, that legacy continues. So you have to be able to show that you have to share what you have, the wealth, the knowledge that you have. So presenting it to, your leadership or organization, that this is very beneficial because as we grow within this transplantation world, as new devices and things show up, we need to have those front end people that are, able to share those processes, be able to, let me think, to move it on and make sure that you're passing it on instead of keeping it. So, I mean, I have a young lady right now that I'm thinking about who would benefit. I mean, she's shining right now in her role, and I even see her just inching to do more. And I see it. So I'm talking with upper management saying, hey, I know I completed this course and others have, let's get her into this role. So, you know, who knows, we might need to branch out to a different offsite or a different satellite clinic and be able to use that person into that role. So it's still growing the program and growing, the institution.
Yeah, it's a great kudos to you for identifying, talent. I think that's probably one of the first things is,
Yeah.
Leaders are busy, but are we having those interactions with our frontline teams to even notice some that we should be investing in, and then kind of getting that buy-in. So that's great that there's, someone you have identified.
And it takes some of that off of, yes, we're all busy, but it also takes some of that off of us so that, I would feel comfortable handing off some of these projects to somebody that I know that is solid and comfortable in doing things.
Yeah, that growth is important.
Mm-hmm.
Robert, what are your thoughts?
So, in a prior life, I worked in area management in retail, and one of the things that we talked about a lot were, when someone came to interview for a leadership role, show me your people that you've grown and that you've moved from one position to another, or we worked in multiple locations, so you'd be able to say, oh, well, this manager at this store worked under me, and we got him to that point, and this young lady worked here, and I think that's something that sometimes we forget about in our industry of, really celebrating as leaders, the successes of those frontline team members. Our executive team are always, taking a look from up on high. But so for those kind of new managers, those middle managers, the importance of, like Siobhan's doing, is recognizing people. And I think that recognition alone means so much to people. I think, just because someone's a high performer doesn't mean that they're always very conscious of the fact that they're a high performer. So for someone like Siobhan to say to her leadership, hey, we need to nurture this person and this talent, I think says great things and means a lot to folks. For the OPO, those frontline staff are the ones representing us as an organization. And I think recognizing that and the importance of of you know, how they interact, how they lead in the hospitals. Like I say, even though hospital development liaisons right at the beginning aren't a manager, they aren't a leadership position per se. To that hospital, they're managing their donation program. They're the face that they see every day. So to me, it's all about equipping them with the tools that they need. And certainly for me, I was already 3 or 4 years into my career in hospital development, probably more like 5 actually. And, you know, for me, it was kind of like a fresh restart of seeing the things, okay, I do this well, I can do it even better now with the tools that I've learned here. And, I'm all about continuous improvement for sure. And I think this helps with that for sure.
Yeah, I love your thoughts as, celebrating, using it kind of to celebrate and also to not test, but I think investing, giving some people some skills or some flavor of what leadership is. I think we've probably all have examples of when people get into leadership and it's not what they expected. You really got to serve the people that you support. And I think people are shocked sometimes how much people focus it is versus some of the individual day-to-day work that they were doing. And so we've talked about, the return on programs like this. There's also that cost of having the wrong person in a leadership role and then that cost to the organization. And so I think that's why it's important maybe to also invest in those front line to see, is this going to be, a successful transition for that person? And there's still that benefit there if they find out, maybe they aren't meant for that leadership role. And so there's that opportunity. So really appreciate your thoughts and insights on those. I think before we go to audience questions, I just want to pause and give you both an opportunity to, if there's anything that you would like to share that we haven't touched upon, happy to kind of hand it over and see if there's any last thoughts.
One thing I did want to mention when we were talking about the coaching calls and your next call, you're going to have to give that feedback as to how that, whatever you were facing, what did you do? How did it go? So, and if it didn't go the way that you expected it to, they still were there to say, okay, well, it didn't go this route. Well, let's use this and figure out how we can go about it this way. So, I mean, now I realize how important those coaching calls were. At first, I was like, oh, I got to talk to somebody. Okay. But you realize that they were so helpful to get you through. And I just I know we talked about it, but I wanted to have an opportunity to go back and say those were really, really helpful for me, I would say.
That is thank you for that, because it's such a great point of it's that self-accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were going to have to go in and face Donna or Karen on that next call, like you said. Yep. and that's okay if it didn't turn out the way you guys prepared for on the previous call. It's a great opportunity to explore, okay, what went well, what could we have done differently, and that accountability you had to those calls is what a great point. So thanks for sharing that insight. Mm-hmm. Robert, anything else you'd like to share?
I think Siobhan made a great point. Those calls were just so important to me. I think you're right about that accountability, keeping you on track. I think then after the fact, it's just the challenge of remembering those skills, so keeping all the materials really close at hand, even after the year of the course, I think is really important. And just continuing to live it. I think we touched on how great it is that Donna and Karen and yourself have the experience of working in our industry. So you learn it, you're kind of taught how to apply it, but really the action is in the doing. And that's the beauty of those calls, is it just, confirms that you are doing the things that you're learning. And like Siobhan said, there may be bumps along that road, but, that's why that's so important to have that safe space, just to, be able to say, well, maybe if I'd done this differently, maybe if I do this differently moving forward, we can, it was just so invaluable for sure.
Yeah. And that's, I think true leadership that you guys have demonstrated to take that and reflect on it and be able to kind of acknowledge, hey, I want to do this differently or better. So love that. I'm going to turn it over to questions to see what questions our audience has before we close it out. I don't know that I see anything there. So while people might be putting questions in the chat, please feel free to ask anything you'd like. I'm sure everyone is open on this call.
Michelle, they can also raise their hand and we can unmute their line.
Perfect. That is a great option too. And Karen, while they're doing that, any words of wisdom or thoughts from yourself?
No, I mean it's been for me kind of eye-opening, because oftentimes we don't realize the impact that we make, in our work. And listening to Robert and Siobhan, their experience in the program is like, wow, for me. Sometimes we don't realize that. I know because we have repeat people from the same organization. I know that that the program is working, or organizations wouldn't continue to send people, which I think both of you have had previous people from your organization go through the program before you did. So that is a great testament to how what an impact it does make on an organization. But this has just been it's been eye-opening for me to hear from you guys the real impact that the program has had on you. It is just wonderful, and I hope more and more people get an opportunity to see this recording and to really realize what these programs are all about. I do have a hand.
Yes, Ira. Am I able to unmute, Karen?
You should be able to, but if not, I think I can.
Oh, I got it.
You got it.
No,
okay, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think I got you. Hi, Ira.
I do have a quick question, more of a request. So speaking specifically about ROI for my organization, as I attempt to justify getting LifeQuest and Shands to kind of put the bill for this or come to some conclusion, I'd be curious, the ROI slide that you had, if I could get a copy of that, I'd really appreciate it, just to point to some of the benefits beyond the kind of the obvious that I saw there. And the other question I have specific to the 3 steps, you and I have had a conversation last month before. The difference between accelerate and thrive. In my current position as a hospital services coordinator, obviously I'm more of a frontline. I have extensive leadership background and from a previous life. And as I'm looking to move into executive leadership within the OPO environment, specifically, what are some differences between those two? You and I kind of talked about that, but I think there's probably some folks on the call that are kind of straddling that borderline, like myself. And I was just curious if you could point out some of the differences and the benefits of either one.
Sure, absolutely. I think it's a great opportunity to kind of talk about the differences of it. And so in the Thrive session, we're really going to talk deeply into strategy and execution from a broader kind of angle. Accelerate, we'll touch upon strategy and execution, but it's more from a departmental lens. And so I think I mentioned earlier, kind of like the levers that you pull, how does that impact an organization from a broader kind of vantage point, more of like a visionary leadership kind of style. That's a lot about kind of the differences of those two. And then additionally, we'll talk a lot about succession planning at a deeper level. We've got some industry experts to kind of help guide us through that. So succession planning will be part of Thrive, things that are more, a lot of times, some focus of executive leadership or senior leaders that are trying to kind of grow the entire organization or look at different opportunities to have some succession planning built in upon their performance improvement or their organizational ladders. And so that will be part of Thrive and not necessarily part of Accelerate. Is that helpful?
It is. Obviously the OPO world is going through kind of a transition period right now. There's a significant sea change going on. And I'm not just looking to pitch this to my organization as a me thing. I'm looking to pitch this to them as a organizational investment. The new generation of leaders coming up, our leadership has been in the industry for about 30 years. So that change is coming regardless. And I'm just looking for ways to justify creating like an internal cohort for LifeQuest to do this, to start building those leaders, which I think is incredibly important to build that next generation coming up. And I'm just looking for the ways to go about selling this program, because you and I have spoken. I've listened today. I've listened to Siobhan and Robert speak. I think this is a good path forward. I think it's the best program out there specific to our industry. And I'm trying to be a salesman for you with my organization and try to get some investment on our end.
Yeah, we appreciate that very much. And yeah, I'm happy to, I will send you those ROI slides and happy to elaborate any more than you need. And then I'm sure Siobhan and Robert are can be available too if you have any questions too.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I know we are up on time. Appreciate everyone on the call, and extending a special thanks to Siobhan and Robert for sharing their experience. We are super grateful for them, their time, their commitment, and for investing in themselves and the organization. So thank you to both of you. I've loved being able to engage with you and getting to know you and learning about your experiences and sharing your valuable advice. So thank you to both of you. I did put the QR code up there quickly if you want to learn more about NATCO's Leadership Development Series. Want to remind you or just share with you that we have our first Leadership Exchange Wednesday, November 5th that we'll be inviting you all to. And then in my true fashion, I always leave with a quote. So leaders create culture, culture drives behavior, and behavior produces results. And we have a lot more lives to save in our industry. And congratulations to all of you for being in this kind of thoughtful industry and serving your mission so well. And with that, I think we will close out and say thank you.
Thank you.
Wishing you all continued success. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
you, Siobhan.
Good seeing you as well. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.